And welcome back. Time for the Capitol Report with Pat McGuigan of CapitolBeatOK.com. Pat, let's start this week by talking about a meeting that took place with Governor Fallin and 5 other governors, meeting with President Obama and Vice President Biden. Talk about the purpose of the meeting and what was Governor Fallin hoping that would come out of this.
Yeah, she didn't go in wearing her ardent conservative hat, although that was part of her message. She went in as the vice chairman of the National Governors Association. The chairman right now is Governor Markell of Delaware. So it was a bipartisan group, 3 and 3. At a time, keep in mind, that the Republicans actually marginally gained strength among the nation's governors. If I'm remembering right, there's now 30 Republican governors, which was inconceivable 30 years ago. In any case, the message she carried was on behalf of the whole group, and she shared the talking points with members of the press and has described them in some interviews, and this is a distillation. She was saying to the president, we need savings for both the states and the feds, and that if you do cuts up here, make sure the states are sharing in those cuts and give the states more authority. There's one point. Authority to carry out policy that's going to devolve to them conceivably under whatever might happen on December 31st or January 1, or if the so-called fiscal cliff is avoided just by the austerity that may or may not be coming in Washington. The second thing she said was, don't shift costs to the states and create yet more unfunded mandates. And of course that's a long-standing conservative criticism of what goes on in Washington, including under Republican administrations. And it's a complaint you hear school districts, for example, make about the legislature here in Oklahoma City. So that's an interesting point. And again, what's interesting is that she was carrying that on behalf of both Democrat and Republican governors, people who have to run something. She said if the states are going to manage the programs, and she actually said, let us manage some of these programs, and find savings and then be able to hang on to those savings. And as an example of a way that she felt that could be done, she was asking the president, and again this is a uniform message from a lot of the governors, let us be the laboratories of democracy. Give us the real authority through waivers under the Medicaid provisions, for example, to preserve things like Insure Oklahoma, and enhance that as a model to provide health insurance needs to people who are economically challenged, rather than simply a cookie-cutter approach coming from the federal government. Related to all of that, her final point was, do not send down the line, as part of these budget cuts that may or may not be coming, further maintenance of effort mandates. And those are a specific kind of requirement under federal law where, regardless of what's done in changing funding, you have to maintain existing amount of effort. It doesn't necessarily mean each and every program. So she carried a conservative message, but it was a conservative message maybe in a little different sense of the word. And certainly it was intriguing to see Biden, President Obama, Governor Fallin, and then the Treasury Secretary down at the end in those pictures of 4. So she was a player this past week in these negotiations that are starting in Washington.
Well, speaking of players, we're just a month removed from the election, and already there's talk about who's going to be playing in the next election in 2016. Speeches, prospective candidates, fundraising emails. Is it too soon to start thinking about 2016?
Well, of course it's too soon, but
Yeah,
I lost
agree.
that argument. You know, I lost that argument a long time ago. On the Republican side, there's something called the Jack Kemp dinner held in Washington. Kemp was my second choice in 1988. And he was a friend. He's passed away. You might remember he was Bob Dole's running mate. Yeah. Anyway, at the foundation named in his memory, both Marco Rubio and Paul Ryan talked. And that's going to be an interesting, if it winds up being the two of them, you in essence with Rubio you have biography, and with Ryan you have red meat in terms of policy substance. So naturally both of them were trying to address that underlying reality in their speeches. Quickly, the other Republicans that are already maneuvering, Jeb Bush, Christie, and Bobb Jindel of Louisiana, just next door to us. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton will begin with a lot of advantages. if she decides to run, she's leaving as Secretary of State, astronomically high approval ratings, including from many Republicans who prefer her strongly to Obama. And then down the line, Biden, people like Ellizabeth Warren, an Oklahoman who's now senator from Massachusetts, and Andrew Cuomo of New York. Not enough time to go into all of it, but there's your initial list of players.
Well, thank you for putting that out there. And you can read more about these and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a good Saturday.